You can print at home in A4 or US letter format. Assemble the pages by aligning the dashed outlines and the connecting boxes. Alternatively, you can print in A0 at the print shop. For all of these options, set 100% scale and ensure that the scale box on page 1 measures correctly. There is one pattern piece per size with the low and the high-rise version. The low-rise version is marked with dashed lines, while the high-rise has solid lines instead. To avoid confusion, here I used an orange marker to outline exactly where I want to cut for the low-rise version. There are markings on both ends which you can use as a guide of where to sew your shirring rows later on. For high-rise, instead I would cut around this line, and for mid-rise I would create my own line in between the low and the high-rise markings. The pattern does include all seam allowance, and this tutorial will demonstrate size medium-large in low-rise fit. Please note that the fabric you choose may affect whether the low-rise fits true low-rise or whether it's more of a mid-rise look. Before cutting any fabric, make sure to pre-wash and iron it. Identify the selvage edge and fold with bad fabric sides facing each other. We're cutting on a fold here as we want to get 2 mirror copies of this pattern. Place any pattern weights you have on top and trace the outline with either a water removable marker or chalk. The pattern does include all seam allowance, so cut exactly on the outline. The markings on the side marked with those small dashes are for where to place your shirring lines later on. For beginners, I recommend copying the markings from the center line as well, which will help you space your shirring lines more evenly. Any markings you make should be on the good side of the fabric so that you can see them later on when sewing. You may choose to draw out the full lines for easier sewing. You should end up with 2 mirror copies of the pattern with markings on the good side of the fabric, on the front, back and center. If you wish to add lace to your bloomers, you'll need 2 different types. I like to use a narrower lace for the waistband and a wider one for the legs. The waistband lace can be one continuous piece. I like to cut it just a bit longer than the total circumference of the waist, just to be sure. For the legs, it can be either one continuous or 2 separate ones, it doesn't really matter here. Overlock the wider lace to the bottom part of both legs. If it's not too obvious from your fabric, make sure to mark which is the good and the bad side, so that you don't end up with 2 pattern pieces that are facing the same way. If your lace has a good side, make sure the good side of both the lace and the fabric are facing each other when overlocking. If you don't have an overlocker, you can use your sewing machine with a combination of a straight and a zigzag stitch as I'm showing you here, remembering to backstitch at the start and end of every seam. If you're using synthetic lace, iron on a cool setting, and ideally you can also put a fabric over it so that the lace doesn't melt. After overlocking, flip the lace and top stitch down. I will demonstrate the rest of this tutorial on my industrial sewing machine as it's a bit quicker, but you can apply the exact same techniques on your home machine. Next, we need to set up our shirring. You will need lots of shirring elastic, so I recommend getting a bigger roll. Remember that thicker elastic thread works better for heavier fabrics. Wind your bobbins by hand for the elastic thread and distribute the elastic evenly. Make sure it's not too tight or too loose on the bobbin. Cut off any threads so that they don't get stuck in the bobbin case. Remember to also not overfill your bobbin, as that will make your bobbin get stuck and not be able to dispense the elastic as you're sewing. I will loosen the tension of the case compared to the normal thread as the elastic is thicker. If the bobbin case is too tight, the elastic thread will not be able to be pulled. If your elastic thread keeps breaking while sewing, it means your bobbin case is too tight. On the other hand, if your shirring and your gathering is very loose and it doesn't have that gathered effect, then your bobbin case is not tight enough. Another sign that your bobbin case tension is too loose is if you just hold it by the thread, the bobbin will just fall down easily. I like to have 2 separate bobbin cases, one for shirring and one for my normal thread, so that I don't have to constantly readjust. Go ahead and insert your bobbin case with the elastic, tighten the tension for the top thread of your machine and change the stitch length to a 4. On your domestic machine, you might not be able to adjust the tension of the bobbin case, so just leave it as is, don't touch anything. Instead, just tighten the top thread, it should still work. Always do a test run on a scrap fabric for each fabric type and elastic thickness that you use. For each row, remember to backstitch at the start and at the end. Each line of shirring really consists of 2 shirring rows that are just very closely put together. Each row needs to consist of an uninterrupted elastic, this is key. So if it runs out halfway through sewing a row, you need to go back, unpick it and redo that individual line of elastic. Here's a sample I made where the elastic ran out and I did not remove the entire line. I instead sewed over it thinking the elastic would get secure, but instead it came undone after 2 wears. You will notice that the back side of the pattern is slightly longer than the front. That is to account for more coverage needed on the back, and it also affects how the shirring rows are distributed. If the front and back were the exact same height, the shirring lines would be parallel lines with equal spacing between them. However, that's not the case here. If you sew from front to back, the space between the rows grows bigger and the other way around. This is why I recommend drawing the full outline of where you need to sew your shirring if you are a complete beginner. Remember to backstitch at the start and finish. Hold the fabric as you're sewing and scrunch it up with your finger, as you can see that I'm doing here. By adding 2 rows, it helps make the gathers tighter, plus ensure longevity if one row, let's say, snaps over time. Repeat the same steps until all rows are done for both pattern pieces. Here I could also sense that the elastic thread was running out, so I just replaced it with a new bobbin. My elastic thread ran out halfway through sewing this row, so I had to unpick it and redo it the right way. Stretch your fabric every now and then just to make sure that everything seems okay and you don't hear any snapping. Now that the shirring is down on both pieces, we're going to press them lightly with an iron. Remember to flatten the sides as the shirring makes it curl up a little bit. Remove any loose threads that you find and then pin the side seams on both sides together with good fabric sides facing each other, and remember to align the rows of shirring. Remove the elastic thread from your bobbin case and replace it with your normal thread. Set your stitch length back to 2 or 2.5 and bring your tension back to normal, so 4 for a domestic sewing machine. Do not sew over pins. Remember to backstitch and sew a straight stitch about 1/2 inch or 1.2 centimeters from the edge. Stretch your fabric as you go so you only sew over flat fabric and avoid sewing over the folds. Cut off any loose threads and overlock the edge on both sides, or use a zigzag stitch if you don't have a serger. We're starting to see the shorts form now, and we're going to connect the crotch seam with the same seam allowance as before. Find the center seams and flip the overlocked edges towards opposite sides to reduce bulk. Pin the fabric together and ensure any shirring rows on the legs align with each other. Straight stitch with the same settings. Similarly, overlock any raw edges or use a zigzag stitch. This time, however, ensure to keep the long threads from your overlocker and use a darning needle instead to push them through the seam. Repeat on both sides. After you're done, flip it inside out, and optional, but I do like to top stitch that seam just for extra hold. Now let's go ahead and add a waistband. Mark 3/4 of an inch or about 2 centimeters from the top row edge. This will be used to fold and make an elastic channel. Fold about 0.6 centimeters and then fold again until you can see the blue line that we marked earlier. Locate the center back and start sewing the elastic channel from there. Backstitch at the start and end using a straight stitch will sew this channel down. Leave a small opening to insert the elastic later on. If you are a beginner, here's an easier version for the same elastic channel. Mark 3/4 of an inch or 2 centimeter seam allowance, the same as before from the top edge, then overlock or zigzag stitch the raw edge. Fold towards the inside, pin and press the channel down. Make sure the channel is wide enough to insert your elastic later on, and you might need to make it just a bit wider than the elastic itself if you wish to add lace. You can push the elastic through with a paper clip. Now back to the original method, press the channel down with your iron for a clean finish. If you don't want to add lace to the waistband, you can hand sew the bow at this stage and make sure to only attach it to the first layer of the waistband. If the thread goes through both layers, you won't be able to push the elastic through later on. If you do want to add lace to your waistband, forget about the bow for now, you need to attach the lace first. Starting from the back center seam again, sew the narrow lace seam very close to the edge and backstitch at the start and finish. Lastly, hand sew the bow as described earlier with a double thread. Now that our channel is finished, we can push the elastic through using a paper clip. Remember to stretch as you go. You can pin the end of the elastic down to prevent it from slipping in as you stretch. Overlap the two elastic ends and pin them. To secure the elastic in place, sew a satin stitch, so basically a very tight zigzag stitch, and the settings I use here are 0.5 for the length, a width of 2. Backstitching at the start and end. Stretch the waistband so the elastic ends go back into the channel. Close the waistband with a straight stitch. Again, remember to backstitch at the front and end, and that's it. Thought I'd include some additional tips. For example, if you don't have a continuous piece of fabric, you can turn the 2 pattern pieces into 4 instead. This will help you use up smaller pieces of fabric and reduce waste. Following the center line, you can cut it in half and add seam allowance to the sides as you'll use that to then connect the 4 pieces into 2. Connect with an overlock stitch, good sides of the fabric facing each other. Flip the seam and press it down with your iron. You should now have 2 pattern pieces as in the original method. For this version here, I also wanted to use a cotton lace instead. Because the cotton lace is more opaque than the see-through synthetic lace we used previously, I am actually going to cut off 1 centimeter from the bottom edge, as otherwise the shorts will appear longer simply because the lace is opaque. I'm also going to cut off about 1 centimeter from the top edge because I'm going to use the cotton lace itself for the waistband channel instead of the fabric. As a result, the pattern now no longer matches the printed version, so we're going to have to redraw our shirring guides. Repeat all the other steps. When it comes to the waistband, we'll do it just a bit differently. Place the cotton lace on the waistband with good sides of the lace facing the good side of the fabric. Repeat the same steps for the waistband. Stretch out the waistband so the elastic is evenly distributed and sew on the bow using your machine this time. Sewing the bow with your machine is just quicker, however you can't see the stitch on the back and doesn't look as neat. Lastly, here are some ways to adjust the sewing pattern. It consists of one pattern piece per leg, with the back side being taller. There are markings for a low and a high rise fit, as well as the equivalent markings for the shirring guides. Now, if you want a mid-rise fit instead, you can draw a line between the high and the low waist markings. If you wish to extend the length equally at the front and the back, make the overall inseam longer. If you want to add more coverage to the butt area only, you need to bring the back of the leg just a bit lower. This way the front stays short. If you want a more low rise while keeping the original back coverage, bring the front of the waist lower up to the center line. If you want to bring the front of the leg higher, adjust the curve like this. And lastly, if you make any changes to the pattern, remember that you might have to readjust the shirring guides on both sides.